Hi there. I'm going to show you how to make a slab mug today. I'm going to use my rolling pin and I'm going to roll out my piece of clay. And as I'm rolling it, kind of moving it from side to side, I want to make sure that my clay is an even thickness. Okay, I don't want it to be too thick on one side and too thin on the other side. I want to try and keep it nice and even as I go. So I'm always going to be doing this gently, giving it a nice roll out. Doesn't have to be any particular shape because I'm going to cut my shape later. All right, that looks good. And you know, the wonderful thing about clay is that it's an organic material. It's from the earth. So you can probably use a rolling pin from your kitchen. Maybe talk to your mom first and then just give it a good wash, a good disinfectant afterwards, and it should be good to go. Same with getting clay on your clothes. It'll wash right out. You'll be good as new. All right, so I've got my slab of clay. It's nicely rolled out here. It's a nice thickness. And then I'm going to cut a rectangle. So now you can cut just with a butter knife. I just found a butter knife from in the house. So I'm going to use that to cut. And you can make a template first if you want to have a specific size for your cup. You can use a ruler to help you cut nice straight lines. You can cut it freehand, whatever you would like. So I'm just going to cut it freehand here. I'm just going to cut a rectangle. And my scraps, I'm not going to wrap them up. I'm not going to put them in a ball or anything. I'm just going to leave them handy because I might need to use my scraps later on. So I'm making my rectangle. Looks good. All right, and I've got some scraps there. What I am going to do with my scraps, though, is I'm going to put some plastic over top of them because clay tends to dry out very fast. And once it dries out, it's pretty hard to use. So you want to keep the clay that you're not using, keep it damp, keep it under plastic so you're going to be able to use it. Okay, so here is my mug. I've got my rectangle already. Now, I want to add some texture to it. I want to make it look not so plain. So there's two different ways you can add texture. You can just add texture right to it on the top, or you can take another little piece of clay, put some texture on that, and then add that to it. So let me kind of show you a little bit of both. Let's say I want, actually, I'm going to roll like a little snake because I've been thinking about leaves. So I'd like to do something kind of with a leaf idea. So I'm going to roll a little snake. And I'm going to just kind of attach my snake somehow up here. And then what I've done is I've taken an actual leaf, and I'm going to see if I can press that actual leaf into my clay and get some nice leaf texture from it. So I'm going to put the vein side down. And then I'm just going to gently press that leaf into the clay. Always when you're pressing a pattern or pressing a texture into the clay, you don't want to do it too hard because you don't want to make your clay super thin in an area. So I just want to gently press that in. Make sure I get all the veiny parts especially. And then I'll very carefully pull that off. Ooh, and I have a very delicate leaf pattern in there. Very cool. And then I'm going to take my little snake, because this is going to be the stem of my leaf, and I want to attach it. So when you attach pieces of clay, you always need to do something that's called slip and score. So slip is just really, really wet clay. So I've got some really, really wet clay here. I got my slip. I'm going to put my slip on the snake, and I'm going to put my slip over here on my mug part. And then I'm going to do something that's called scoring. And scoring is just drawing little lines. So I'm just taking a paper clip. I'm going to open it up a little bit. I'm going to draw a few little lines on here. They don't have to be fancy. They don't have to all look the same. Just however you want to do them. Put some lines on here. Both pieces that you want to slip and score together that you want to attach. And there we go. Then I'm going to attach that. Just give it a good press. Press it in. Nice. And so what happens, the way that joins together is the slip, that really wet clay, it fills in those little cracks, those score lines that you made, and it acts like a glue and it holds it together. All right. So once you have your mug piece decorated however you want, and you can, the sky's the limit, man. You can go crazy. I brought a pen outside here because I could use a pen to make some little doodads. Maybe we'll put some doodads at the top here. Ooh, those are kind of fun. You can make some texture with just about anything. Yeah, that's pretty neat. I also brought a pine cone, or not a pine cone, some pine needles. Maybe I want to make some texture with that. So you may want to play around with a scrap piece of clay first. So one thing with clay is once you've worked it, once you've used it, it's you can roll it back into a ball and use it again, but sometimes it gets too dried out and it can be pretty tricky. So if you just use some of your scraps and play around with that, that might help. Okay, so I'm gonna put this in here a little bit, add to my texture. All right, now I want to put this together. So very gently, I'm going to turn this into my cylinder. I'm doing it very gently and slowly because I don't want the clay to crack. I don't want my cylinder to crack. All right, once I've got it so it meets, now I'm going to take more slip and score, and I've got to join those two sides together. So my slip goes on both pieces, both spots that I'm joining together, and then I score it. So I use my little paper clip there, score it all up. Again, you're going to score both sides. If you forget to slip and score, then what my suggestion is, take it apart and do it again, because if you don't slip and score, your piece will not stay together. It will fall apart at some point during the process. So slipping and scoring is super, super important. All right, then I'm going to very carefully join it together. I want to make sure that my joining is nice and tight and that it stays together. And then what I'm doing right now is I have my one hand underneath it and I'm supporting it and I'm smoothing it out with the other hand, my other finger. I just do it gently with a finger. Oh, looks good. Getting that all together, eh? If I smooth it over, then I won't see that seam very much. You can see that my rectangle is not a perfect rectangle because remember I just did it, I didn't use a ruler or any other tools. So I have a bit of a spot at the top, but I'm going to live with that. All right. So now once I have my cylinder put together, my seam is nice and tight, it's smoothed over. I'm feeling like this is great. It's not finished yet because if I put liquid in here, it's going to go right through. I need a bottom to it. So that's where your scraps come in handy. I've got this big scrap here, so I'm going to put it down. Make sure I've got it in a circle. I'm going to use my paper clip to go around it first before I cut it. Just draw my circle. There we go. Okay, so I've drawn my circle. Now I'm going to use my knife here. I'm going to cut that out. Awesome. Okay, I've got it cut out. I've got my circle. So now this fits right on top of there. Now what do we need to do? Slip and score. That's right, because we want to join those two pieces together. So we're going to throw some slip on it. And you know what? That slip is all going to dry. So if you put too much, it's going to be okay because you can dry, that'll all dry up afterwards. I'm going to score it. and then the bottom. Again, and you notice that I'm not being too particular about my lines. I just want to have them there. They don't have to be perfect or beautiful because they're going to be covered up, right? That's where you're joining those pieces together. All right, and you want to make sure that that's well attached. I'm going to flip my mug over, my cylinder over here, and I'm going to smooth my bottom out this way. Oh, look at that, eh? You want to be really careful in your joining process because you do not want holes in your mug. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty hard to drink out of. You put your liquid in there, it will come right through. So be careful that you don't have holes in there, that you've smoothed it out nice. It's all joined together. All right. Okay, so there is my cylinder. So now I can just leave it like that because maybe I want a cup. If I want to make it into a mug, I can add a handle to it. So again, there's where my scraps come in handy. I'll just take a scrap and cut a little rectangle, a skinny rectangle, and I'll attach that to my mug. That will be my handle. So I've got, decide where's a good spot to join it. And then with a handle, you really want to make sure it's well joined. So that, again, you're going to slip and score that. Make sure it's really, really well attached. I'm going to join mine like this, pressing that pretty tight there. And then the bottom, put my hands inside, give a nice press there. There we go. There we go. We did it. We made a mug. Now, if I just left this mug out like this, chances are it would not make it. It probably would dry too fast. So it's really important once you're done with your piece and you've done everything you kind of want to do to it, then what you're going to do is you're going to get a plastic bag. You're going to put your mug on some safe surface, someplace where it's not going to get knocked or banged into, because right now it's kind of wobbly and it's really fragile. So you want to put it in a safe spot, and then you're going to cover it with a piece of plastic. Okay, you don't have to cover the bottom of it. It doesn't have to be super, super tight, but you want to cover it with plastic. You want to let it dry with plastic for a few days. You can come back to it the next day and look at it. When you come back the next day, it will have hardened up a little bit so that if you had any smooth edges, you would be able to go and just kind of gently smooth those out a little bit with your finger. Sometimes what I like to do too is I just put a teeny tiny bit of water on my fingers, not really, really wet, just a little bit, and then that will help me to smooth as well. Then I can smooth off any of the rough edges or anything like that. But you don't want to add a lot of water to it. Just like, it's almost like you make your fingers wet and then you dry them, and then you work on your piece again. Okay, so you'll let it dry till it's super dry, and the next step would be putting it in the kiln. So then if you're bringing it back to me, you would bring it back over to my house, and I would put it in the kiln, and I would glaze it and get it all set for you. So anyways, I hope you enjoy playing with clay. Have an awesome day.